Sam Hartman has had multiple 1,000-yard receivers in his days at Wake Forest. So if he can get that at Notre Dame, that's going to be interesting because I don't need a tight end to be my leading receiver. I need to stretch the field. That's going to open up the run game for them.
Yeah, I started looking at some of the receiver numbers and where these guys are from. And one, they're big. That's an important thing. But, Jaden Thomas is a young guy out of Atlanta. Greathouse is a Texas guy, Austin, Texas, actually a really good basketball player at Westlake. So if those guys develop, they got something here. And their defense, Navy was running the ball pretty well. They weren't efficient in the red zone, but they shut them down on the ground in the second half.
Yes, they did. They adjusted. They got it done. That's what Marcus Freeman does. So let's see it.
So how geeked up do we get about them, though? Because they have an incredibly tough schedule.
Schedule's really tough, and that's what my buddy said to me. He's like, there's no way they can get to the playoff with that schedule. But if they keep throwing the ball like they did, if they can continue to stretch, USC is going to give up big plays to them, which means they can probably beat USC. They got to play Clemson, sure. Maybe you drop that game to Clemson. That's fine. But we don't know what Clemson's going to look like either. And we got to see them on Monday night against Duke. So that's going to be interesting to see what Cade Klubnik really looks like for real because I don't trust Clemson's wide receivers as far as I can throw them right now because they're a group of guys. They don't have a Sammy Watkins. They don't have a DeAndre Hopkins. They don't have a Mike Williams. They don't have a Deion Kane. They don't have a T. Higgins. They don't have that guy right now, and they're still looking for him. So I think Riley Leonard and Duke have an opportunity there. But to go back to Notre Dame, so Clemson's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, they got to play USC. And they play Ohio State as well. I think if they can win all their games and they split in some way, shape, or form between, if they can go 1-2 against Ohio State, USC, and Clemson, this is a team that's probably going to end up in the playoffs.
Wow. Okay. Most accurate pass of the season already filed away. Jalen Maiden from San Diego State, right in the kisser in the face of a referee. That was amazing.
I mean, you know what? He might have unlocked some secret portal for guys to avoid intentional grounding. Like he truly might have. He might have unlocked a secret portal. Listen, I know the Maiden family. I love the Maiden family. Like I covered Jared Maiden in high school and when he went to Alabama to play safety, and then loved Jalen. Obviously went to Mississippi State, transferred to San Diego State. But he might have unlocked a secret portal of, hey, here's how you can get out of intentional grounding and also, live to play another play and throw an incompletion. Just hit the ref. Just hit one of the officials in the face.
What did you get out of Vandy, Hawaii?
Not much, man. What did you get out of it? Rain delay?
Well, I'm a little worried about Vandy that they couldn't put away Hawaii. And I already know Hawaii from watching them last year up close. Yep. They're gritty. He's building a program. They fight like hell. They're not going to give up. So that was a positive. But it leads us to this week's game, and then we'll get to a lot of the bigger games. Hawaii is now going to host Stanford. Yep. In Vegas, this number went up at 11. Stanford on the road minus 11. It's now 3. I think it's an overreaction, but I keep hearing from people that Stanford is really going to suck, but I really like their coach.
Yeah, we all like the coach. The coach don't change the players. And they got who they got, and we'll see if these dudes can play. Listen, you think they got a Solomon Thomas on this roster? Because I don't. No. I don't think they got a Zach Ertz. I don't think they got any of those dudes, and this is going to be interesting. New quarterback they're breaking in. They got to deal with all these issues they got on the offensive and the defensive line. Listen, we used to talk about Stanford having the best tight ends, best offensive line, and some of the best defensive linemen in the game. And we ain't talking about them like that anymore. So for me, when I look at Stanford, they might be in trouble. Long trip, you figure it out. But, man, and Hawaii, they got to feel like we were close because they were close. They were very close to that game, and they had to deal with – and I guess the game kind of got reset to their schedule, didn't it? Where, once that delay hit, they're like, oh, now we're really ready. And Vandy, they gave Vandy all they could ask for, so it's going to be really interesting.
All right, you just mentioned if you don't have the players, what do? Does Brent Venables and Oklahoma have the players on defense? By the way, they're laying 35.5 against ArkSt, and they're not good, but that's a big number.
I think they have the guys. It's about these guys doing what they're supposed to do, and that's the big key for me. I think Venables came in, and I think that they didn't want to listen to him, and I based that on kind of the residuals from Alex Grinch, right? Where Grinch let guys do what they did, and he was like, that's fine, do whatever. We're watching it at USC. We just talked about it at USC. Right. And so I think Venables, he realizes he got to tighten it. Venables got to get those boys tightened up, and that's going to be the part that's going to be interesting. It's not about the players for them. They've got guys that can play. This is about them tightening it up. And Venables, I think he hangs his hat. He prides himself on playing good, tight defense. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, I'm gonna get your behind out of the game. And so I'm gonna see if that happens this year. That's what I'm looking for with Oklahoma in this first month of the season.
I'm fascinated by Iowa to start the season. The kid is still around as the OC. They've got a gambling scandal. I heard Ferentz watched them last week do whataboutism, like, hey, we got caught, but what about everyone else who's betting? I'm like, okay. They have a quarterback issue right now because Cade McNamara sounds like he's very questionable. They're playing a Utah State team that has experience at quarterback and had a good second half last year. And it looks like Iowa's going to play a kid named Deacon Hill, who has bounced from Santa Barbara to Wisconsin, a quick commit to Fordham, and now he's at Iowa. He is 6'3" and 258 pounds. I can't wait to see this guy.
I want to see him too. This is going to be interesting. I think Iowa, listen, we know what it's going to be. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? Lean on these guys, get heavy. You recruit all those corn-fed Midwestern boys for moments like this where I don't want to have to overthink it. I just want to hand the ball off. We're not going to do anything special. And then they're going to be getting geared up for Iowa State a week from this weekend. So the whataboutism, as you mentioned, is interesting because this guy, he feels like he's Teflon, right? And he's had multiple scandals, the drug house, the rhabdo, obviously gambling. Like, he's hit a trifecta and he's still somehow the trifecta hits the slots for him.
Yeah.
Where he still keeps winning. So we'll see how this shakes itself out. And but no, with Iowa, I definitely want to see this quarterback.
Yeah.
And I also I think they're going to live on defense and running the football. That's the reality. Because they just want to get the next week and hopefully not lose when they play Iowa State.
It's Felder at Substack.com is the newsletter. Michael Felder is with us. I'm going to pull something from the last write-up, and don't get shocked. And I can't use the language, but everyone out there, slow the F down.
Yes.
You and I both have gray in the beard, so maybe this is why we notice stuff like this, but I've always noticed it. You pointed out, man, people, when school starts, freaking relax in the cars.
Yeah. It's near and dear to me. Like, I went to a high school that's on a kind of a semi-main drag, Monroe Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. We lost multiple kids during my time in high school, and then it keeps happening. I drive my kid to a school that's near another school that's on Park Road, near another main drag here in Charlotte, and they have a memorial. They have multiple memorials up. Same thing with another school that I passed that has memorials up for kids that have been hit by cars. And it just leave earlier and go slow. Like, I bought a slow down man that just, like, I literally set outside to have people slow down. Like, there's kids at bus stops. There's kids that are walking to school. And one of the biggest things that my dad ever taught me was, when you're driving, it's your job to take care of everybody else on the road. And it's not just about being aware, not just about defensive driving, it's to make sure that, like, you take care of other people. And I think that it's an important message to send, because I'll say this, shout out to Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department. They, after day one of school, they were like, okay, we got to monitor Park Road near South Meck. We're out here. They had 2 motorcycle cops. They had a couple cops in Ford Explorers, and they were like, we're pulling everyone over.
Nice.
Because we got schools here, and we don't need another kid to get ran over. We don't need a student a kid that's listen, 16-year-olds are terrible drivers. Terrible. But what we don't need is you not paying attention and hitting them. And we also don't need them hitting each other, because that's a problem. And so it's one of those things that I want folks to pay attention, because it does matter and it's important. That's
Michael Felder is with us here on Cofield & Company on ESPN Las Vegas, college football expert from Stadium, host of Learfield College Sports Now. Boy, I like what you said about taking care of each other. Football players, ex-football players, generally take care of each other.
Yeah.
Unless you watched what Tom Luganbill did to Deion Sanders in a quick video during the week. Luganbill played the game. I respect him, and I don't really disagree with what he said, but man, he freaking battered Colorado. We've talked about Colorado before. I mean, is it a really uphill climb against a rebuilding TCU team? Like, how far behind from a roster standpoint are the Buffs and Deion?
Man, I was watching. Did you see the Michael Irvin video?
Oh, yeah.
Why did Michael Irvin look so much bigger than all those players that had numbers in the 60s and the 90s?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, it's not a knock
Yeah.
on them. I'm not putting a knock on them. I think, listen, if they're going to be good, they can be good. We'll find out if Prime can coach. We'll find out if all the minds that he brought in on offense and defense are good. I love Dion as a defensive backs coach. I think he is one of the best to do it. Like, obviously, he's one of the best to do it from playing standpoint. I also think he's a really good, like, he imparts information to defensive backs in a way that most people cannot. And he talks about things that I never even thought about. And I fancy myself as a defensive back expert, but he talks about guys' stance and how they line up and chest up versus shoulder slump and arms here and arms there and what you can do to them with all those things. And that's little minutia in the game that matters. I don't know if he's a good head football coach for one of these, like a team that's going to be in the Big 12 next year. So we'll see what happens. But the big thing for me, all these transfers, and he brought 10 kids from, was it Jackson State? Brought 10 kids in with him. Great, fantastic. 10 kids. Roster's 110 kids. You bring in 10 kids that play together already. You bring in you bring in 80-something transfers. At the end of the day, these kids got to play with each other. And that's the part that gives me pause because I don't know what that looks like. It's hard enough to get 25 freshmen to be on the same page in a regular recruiting cycle. The idea of bringing an entire new team. You're in Vegas. Can you imagine if the Raiders brought in, what's the percentage here would be, what if the Raiders brought in 40 new guys? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
You'd be like, what is this? What are we doing? And that's what they're trying to do. So obviously Travis Hunter is going to be interesting. Shadur Sanders is going to be interesting. But at the end of the day, these guys all got to gel. These guys, every one of these guys transferred to play.
So I think you bring up I was going to say,
if you're a transfer senior, you're second on the depth chart, you're like, what are we doing? Because I came here to play.
I think you bring up one of the most important points, though, and that is the size and physicality. And listen, following UNLV, they had a lot of turnover, and I was watching the O-line transfer market real closely. It was hyper competitive. So you can have all the skill players you want, and on the back end of the defense be really good.
Yep.
But if you don't have offensive and defensive linemen, by the way, who are old, like bringing in freshmen who are 270, it's just there's a different man strength on those lines. And when you're competing sometimes against 22, 23, 24-year-olds, you can't coach that up.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do. They put the paws on you and you're in trouble. And TCU does have that. So when I look at TCU, the big thing for me is I know they have to replace more talent than they've ever lost in 1 year. I'm not saying they haven't had talent because they absolutely have, but to replace it in 1 year, that's tough. And so they have to deal with that. And they have to deal with, this is what, year 3, I think, with a new coach, year 2, year 3 with a new coach, and they're still figuring it all out. So I'm looking forward to watching this all shake itself out. I actually get to talk to Landry Burdine, who's their sideline guy, get to talk with him tomorrow. So, which is going to be cool. So get a little more insight into it, but man, this is a team that knows who they are. They know what they have to do. So I'm looking forward to this football game. It's going to be really interesting.
How big is North Carolina, South Carolina in your area? A primetime matchup of quarterbacks too.
It's huge. It's a big deal. Like it's sold out. My buddy Miller Yoho actually helps put the game on for the Charlotte Sports Foundation. So the Dukes Mayo Kickoff Classic. I'm excited about it. I am looking forward to watching what this looks like. I think South Carolina is going to win, if we're being quite honest. I think they're going to win. I think they have a better football team. I think Drake May might be the better quarterback, but Spencer Rattler is going to play his behind off. And so this is going to be a really interesting one. And what people don't realize is South Carolina is closer to Charlotte than Chapel Hill, okay? It's closer than Raleigh. It's closer than Durham. It's closer than Greensboro. So with the exception of Charlotte UNC fans, everyone else has a shorter drive from Columbia and from Greenville to Charlotte than the UNC fans. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes itself out. I don't know, it's a game where we get to see Beamer really do his thing. In South Carolina, they're feeling themselves. I don't know if you guys, I follow them, like I watch them on social media. This is a team that's very confident coming into this year. They are having fun. They are doing their thing. This is going to be an interesting football game.
Should we be on upset alert? Old Dominion-VTech. VTech is laying 15.5.
Yes, absolutely. You know they're 1-2 against ODU in the last 3 times they played. 1 in 2. So 3 times. 2 of those times, I believe, ODU was an FCS team, and they lost to them. Then they beat them 1 time. And so we're looking at this as like, if you lose this game, you might have to show yourself the door.
Interesting matchup on Sunday, and there's games on Sunday.
Yes.
Oregon State's at San Jose State. So, 1, Spartans already have a game in hand against USC. 2, I don't think a lot of people around the country know that San Jose State has been working on their stadium, and they built a whole football and athletic facility. They blew out the stands in this 1923 stadium. So that place, they don't get good crowds, but it should be rowdy. And then there's the other side where I think a lot of us are rooting for Oregon State, kind of left by the wayside in the Pac-12 split. And a lot of us want to see Oregon State roll and actually compete to get into the college football playoff. Wouldn't that be dynamite? Hell of a game.
Yeah, I love it. DJ Uiagalelei. I like Ben Gulbranson, by the way, just for the record. I like Gulbranson. I think he's a really good quarterback. I thought he showed himself very well in the games that he started at the back end of the season. But DJ Uiagalelei is who we expect to play for Oregon State. This is a team that's explosive. They play really good defense. Their numbers are completely off the chart in terms of you shouldn't be this good with how okay you were. And then defensively, you're like, oh, this is where they make up for it. Their defense was really good. When you get to San Jose State, what's the kid? Nick Nash is an absolute hoss. Love that dude.
Yep.
He's so good. And he embarrassed USC, embarrassed them multiple times. So this is a good football game. And here's the thing when it comes to San Jose State, remember, they had one side of the stadium set up. So all we got to look at when we were watching those games was the construction on the other side.
Yep.
And so now we get to see it kind of put back together. I'm very excited about that.
Last 2 minutes with Michael Felder.
Yep.
Make sure you sign up for his newsletter. It's Felder at Substack.com. He's part of the Learfield family as well. Biggest game of the weekend on paper, 2.5-point spread, LSU and Florida State. Ooh. What do you think?
I love this football game. I like Jaden Daniels. Let's start with this. I love Jordan Travis. I think Jordan Travis in the ACC is an absolute monster. He's got a team around him that can win. Their running back room is unbelievable. Jared Verse on the defensive side, Akeem Dent on the defensive side. Those guys make plays. LSU, though, I think they've got a better head coach in Brian Kelly. And I think that's a huge difference maker. And the biggest reason for me that stood out was I was watching some Jaden Daniels because I hadn't done much Jaden Daniels, right? I talked about what Alabama's room is going to look like. I talked about what's going to happen with the ACC's quarterback with Travis and Klubnik and Drake May. But I hadn't done much on Jaden Daniels. I started to look at Jaden Daniels, and man, you watch him play. The coolest thing for me is they run 5-man routes. Now, there are only 5 guys on any play that can touch the football that aren't the quarterback. Hey, unless you're doing like a Ruski or whatever. But 5 guys can touch the ball. You have 2 wide receivers, 1 wide receiver, a tight end, a running back, whatever. And they get all 5 of those guys out. When you watch most college football, what you're going to see, and I hope folks listen to this, because when you watch most college football, what you're going to see is you're going to see 3, and you're going to see maybe 4 guys go out. Running back stays in the block or tight end stays in the block. You're going to see teams that run a ton of half-field reads. So even though you have guys that in theory can run, these guys don't matter because all the quarterback is doing is looking over here. Simplified. They run 5-man routes, true 5-man routes where Jaden Daniels goes 1, 2, 3, 4, back to this. And he's hitting guys. He's playing this. He understands how this all works. I think it's a really good marriage between him and Brian Kelly. 5
days of college football on the way, including today where it's already kicked off. All right, Daddy, have you told the family? Hey, it's college football time. Daddy Mike's got a lot of responsibilities. Everyone's got to take care of their business.
We are in a wild, wild west right now. This is a thing we've never done. So my wife is going back to work. She's working part-time as a preschool teacher. My daughter just started kindergarten this week. So we have all those things plus this. So it's my work, her work, my kid going to school. This is a completely new world. It's uncharted waters. I have no idea how it's going to work. I'm glad that the pool is still open for a little while. So on Saturday, they can go to the pool and have some fun because we are about to start packing it in. And it starts tonight with Utah and Florida, which, by the way, I don't know what to expect out of Utah.
You are the best, man. Juggle all of it. Enjoy the college football this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, man. You take it easy.